Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our with our derivation. Excuse me. What is sensorality? What does sensorality stabilize? So last episode we have kind of like the big question, right? Is the alphabet chronological? And if it is chronological, I mean there's structure to it, there's order to it, but what order is it? Again, looking to show this finalizing, stabilizing iteration of syllability for sensorality to stabilize our definition and produce our new word form. And so I just like that intuition. Is the alphabet chronological? Now, is the alphabet dichotomistic? This word that I've kind of introduced, clearly built on the word dichotomy, but just everything has a dichotomy to it, and then you force a single conclusion. And so, does the alphabet have dichotomy? And what does that mean? Again, this inversion, right? A and D are inverses. The shapes are kind of similar. You can rotate the A about 180 degrees and kind of get like the curl in the same area, but they're not the exact same shape literally. And so, right, A, E, A. And so, how does dichotomy manifest for sound? Specializing personalizes. Personalizing sensorizes. Reality is periodic, right? There's cyclicity to everything, right? Everything comes in cycles. Just the nature of how, again, momentum progresses. It comes in waves. Exotic is periodic. Periodic is odd. And as a natural definition, right? Periodic is odd. Sensorality is odditality. Sensorality is odd. Odd is open. So now here's another logical thing I've been saying is, right, again, we have these fundamental stability of two, this aspect that completes. And then we have a part that is open, right? You can't complete everything. There's going to be events in the future. There's going to be new situations, new words to describe new things. And so, right, but I've been saying odd is open, or just, again, not balanced, right? If you have a triangle and you go through the center point geometrically, the distance from one vertex to the center, then going straight through that vertex to the other side is not a vertex, so one side is longer. That's what I'm saying by geometric, or the geometry is open. I mean, that's the physical reason of why vibration does exist and things don't just, like, again, stop moving altogether. But just overarching, relating the concept of odd and even to opened and closed, or dynamic and static. But we've been saying odd is open. And then I have literally in my notebook, I had odd is not open, and then scratched out not, and then put, and just kept it as odd is open from odd is not open. Because immediately after I have open is unresolved, right? Logically, if you have a question and it's an open question, right, it's unresolved. We don't know the resolution. We don't know the finality of what we're trying to say. And then again, it's kind of, again, paradoxical till we say, physically, directly, right, the things you can resolve are odd, or they're not, they're asymmetric, right? They don't collapse in on itself. So there's some sort of substance, some sort of structure. So we've called that odd. And so, if we said odd is open and open is unresolved, we're saying odd is unresolved. But then we've just said, again, this asymmetry is odd and that is resolvable, right? That's the structure we see. So, don't know if anyone else picked that up, but just pointing out, again, any point of logic of this derivation. And so, but just progressing along, anything that is seemingly paradoxical or that is unresolved is all demonstrated with this stabilization of sensorality, which again we've already done for speciality. So it's not like this hasn't been done. It's some unknowable process in the future, but I'm not going to look it up. Again, it's just, but it's not unique. It would be unique to speciality, so it doesn't even matter. But resolution finalizes, right? Now getting away from our direct physical intuition, right? If you have something resolves, you get some sort of guidance, some sort of finality to a situation. Sensorality is finality. Orality is final. And that's kind of the logic for, I have the final say, I have the last word. Orality is final. What I say goes. Sensorality is not a word, and we're going to find its stabilizing iteration. Stabilizing finalizes. Sensorality is able to censor. Direct natural definition, not specific enough to reduce. Is periodicality chronological? Right? Do periods happen in order? Right? It has to start somewhere. Again, geometrically, if you have one thing, most fundamental thing in geometry, a point, and then you go to, right, it has some sort of direction or some sort of size to it. I don't want to use the D word, not going to use it. It has some sort of length to it. Then you get a line, right? Then you close that object. Then you get a circle or a triangle. But sticking to like just the geometric intuition of a circle, right? I would say that's your most simple period, right? If you just go around a circle one time, boom, boom, boom. Then you get a frequency. Then you're having a period, periodicality. But you had to start somewhere, right? And so we have this intuition of a spiral and a cone. So if you just put a pen on a paper and just start moving it, right, and you go in a circle, right, you're going to form a spiral. And you can't, again, there's not, like, that's the uniqueness of chirality, is you have to start somewhere, right? There's a chronology to things. And so your intuition of periodicality is just things happening cyclically. But in reality, you can't return to the same space-time coordinates because time progresses. And then geometrically, again, that manifests as a good intuition, or a good way to see that or feel that is the spiral to the cone. When does a cycle start? Where does a cycle start? What is where to when? And just asking and producing these fundamental questions with these fundamental question words. What is where to when? All right, where is here, when is now, is what I asked in like one of the very first, first couple lectures, or again, I introduced them as lectures because it was like, hey, I know what I'm doing, but then it's just we get to enough derivation where it's just demonstrable if you just watch the process. But moving along. Sensorality is the center of attention. Chirality is chronological. That's this process of evolution of all physical differentiation. It produces this chirality, this asymmetry, because we have this, again, absorption. Right? We have this like fundamental stability of two where it has to like change, invert something. And so chirality is chronological. Sensorality prioritizes. Sensorization is prioritization. And so now again, I remember this, we gotta be close. I think it's this like kind of word form, right? What is a priority, right? It's a prior with an ority. But, all right, if you're censoring something, you're prioritizing it, right? It's like this thing here, no, we like this, no, we don't like that. Any sort of differentiation of information is sensorizing, is, almost wanted to say sensation there, but again, it does, you can't break language. It's just like we're just building up to this direct iteration. But prioritization, sensorization, right? The RIZ from sensorization is the right, you have priorization, but then it's just iterated by it. And then historically, right, we have our great, back to Professor Carroll at Hopkins again, bro. Not even Johns Hopkins, you know where I work. It's Hopkins, bro. But Bayesian priors, just how does a system that's inanimate, that doesn't have choice, how does it prioritize things, right? Physical properties, right? If you have your, charge is not electric. I personally default to narrative, meaning the storytelling of fundamental physics, right? Electric charge, but charge is not electric. Electricity is moving electrons, it's moving charge. And so, but not the point for this one or for right now, but just how does physical systems prioritize filtration? Sensorities are priorities. And so there we have a direct iteration, and look, it's the word rights, right? Priorities are rights. Rights are priorities. Those are natural definitions, right? And that's with the spelling with the R-I-T-E-S. And so, yeah, I guess directly just to point it out, overemphasize priorities. It has that another I to pluralize priority, but it's a direct iteration of the rights, R-I-T-E, such as a rite of passage. Prioritize, privatize. The opposite of privatization is publication. Publication publicizes, right? So now, again, with this evolution linguistically is, again, do natural opposites rhyme? Do natural opposites, right? Because right there, the opposite of privatization, probably if I just stopped right there, you probably would think publicization or publicizing. But I just have publication. And so how does this chiral process look and manifest linguistically with the actual letters, the rhyming, the numeric syllables present in a given word? What does natural opposition look like? What does similarity look like? Because again, this form, it is what it is effectively the identity matrix of linguistics. And everything is infinitely unique, so it roots back, or it's, comes back to itself. And so these natural definitions are us like forming this linguistic bound where we're trying to show this completeness of the entire, what I call a word family, but just a chunk of syllability that's completable. What is sensorality? Sensorality publicizes. Prior is before. So now we get out of this, okay, what is a priority, but what is prior, before? The opposite of sequel is prior. So that was a big logical one, because again, what is a sequel? It's a movie or something, some event that comes after something else. Sequels are sequential, natural definition. And so, what's the opposite of that? Well, it's, of course, dude, it's a prequel, right? Didn't you see the movie cinema? But it's a prior, right? If something is prior, it's, or the opposite of something coming after is coming before. So the opposite of a sequel is a prior. Sensorality tends to prioritize. And there, again, I just naturally introduced the word tend, but speciality is the tendency. Tension, tendency. Tendency is this right linguistic word, or this right word to pair. Again, I try not to create word salad. But again, just there's thinking using the word linguistic being redundant. But tend, it's like, where did it come from? The opposite of sequel is prior. That was the next step. Sensorality tends to prioritize, right? Inanimate objects, right? They prioritize filtration or sortation from their properties, right? If you're a positive charge or a negative charge, you're going to deflect positive or negative charges differently. But if you're a sentient being, or if that's redundancy, not to be stupid, but right, just not to point out everything as I continue to do. But if you're a sentient being, you can choose stuff. And so that's more prioritization as opposed to inanimate objects deflecting things with their physical properties. A priority is a tendency. So that's now, again, trying to show you this where it's like we introduce something, the sensorality tends to prioritize, and then we say, where did it come from? And it's just the next step. So there is like progression where it's like I have effectively like a lemma, then the next line like proves it. And so it's like there is like real gradation like that. I don't know what you do about it. And then when you're actually in person and like people have never seen math before, they're like, they don't get the flow of how fast proofing progresses for me. But a priority is a tendency. If you tend to do something, you prioritize it. A proclivity is a tendency. What is tendency to frequency? Right? If it's a proclivity, if you tend to do it, the frequency in which you engage in that activity is higher in frequency. So that is what I have for this morning. My rights continue to be violated. I continue to truly beg for a little bit of money, to eat properly, to sleep properly, because my life quality is truly zero. The days just keep going by. It's never going to stop. And the fact that people continue just to waste my life is profound. That's what I have for now. See you on the next one.